Hi, Don and Aliru. Hi, Jeremy and Markalela. Hi, Monica and Shannon, Talia and Veronica, Rianu. Hi, Crystal and Ashley, Adaezi, and hi, Kirsty. Hi to those of you joining us via recording and joining us later on in the session. I'm Associate Professor Nicolette McGuire. I'm OUM's Associate Dean for Student Engagement. So nice to see some new names and faces and some returning folks as well. For those of you who have come to previous webinars and know me, know that I have lost my voice today. So I'm going to do my best to enunciate as well as possible. If you have any issues hearing me, we'll make sure that we can address that by repetition or providing anything in our chat window or Q&A. I'm joined today by Ms. Shanda Gordon, who is our admissions manager. And we will be speaking with you all today about information for admissions. This is the OUM Admissions Information webinar. So today we're going to do some information about the admissions requirements, the admissions process, and the interviews process that OUM has for its future medical students. We'll talk a little bit about OUM's curriculum so you have an understanding of what you may have in store for you during the preclinical, transitional, and clinical years as a medical student at OUM. We'll speak a little bit about our Student Ambassador program, and then we'll have time for a Q&A and some next steps and dates on admissions at OUM. Throughout the session, if you have questions for myself or for Ms. Gordon, please do type your questions into the Q&A box, and we're happy to take those questions live. We will also have a section at the end for Q&A, so if there's any questions that you want to hold or that we're not able to get to as we're going through each set of information, we will be sure to cover it during the Q&A section. And if we are not able to get to it by that part, we'll also ensure we get back to you via email. So we so appreciate your time and attention today. And we are going to go ahead and get our session started now. But again, if you have questions or want to interact with myself or Ms. Gordon throughout the session, please do use the Q&A box. So I'm first going to turn the floor over to Ms. Shanda Gordon to introduce herself and talk about her role in admissions. Shanda, would you like to take the floor, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's good to see you all here today. So I am an admissions counsellor and I work in the admissions team at OUM, and I am here to assist you with all of your application questions and how to get your application in to us so that you can apply to the MD program at OUM.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to, again, turn the floor over to Ms. Gordon to speak a little bit about admissions and the requirements and information that you need to know when you apply to OUM. So please go ahead.
Thanks again, Associate Professor McGuire. So yeah, today I'm just going to talk about what the entry requirements are and about the application process for OUM. So the minimum entry requirements to be considered for entry into OUM are you need to have completed at least a bachelor's degree with a GPA of 3 on the 4-point scale or 5.5 on the 7-point scale, or its equivalent. If your institution has used a different grading system, you can contact your admissions counsellor or the admissions office if you don't have a counsellor yet. And we'll just need to see your transcripts and the grading system so that we can do the calculation for you and find out what your GPA is on those scales. Having good grades in science subjects may help your application, but it isn't a requirement. We do have an English language proficiency requirement. So if English is your second language, but you have studied at an English-speaking institution, you should be able to meet the requirements. But if you're unsure, you can contact your admissions counsellor and they can advise if you meet the requirements or if you need to sit an IELTS or TOEFL exam. At OUM, we don't require a GAMSAT or MCAT score for entry, so that's good. However, it is important to note that we only accept prospective applicants who are residents of the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Samoa. So if you are not a resident of those countries, we won't be able to accept your application at this time. Next slide, please. So the admissions process and interviews. So it's important for you to get all of your questions answered, and I encourage you to make contact with the admissions team. The admissions team are here to help you with any questions you have, big or small. You can contact us directly, make an appointment, or email us, and we'll answer all of your questions. The OUM program is unique with our online curriculum and fee structure, among other things. So it is really important that you get your questions answered so that you are fully prepared. Two of the biggest challenges that our students face is understanding the workload and financial commitment. The MD program is a full-time program and it takes huge time commitment. So we need to make sure that you and your loved ones understand that that is a big commitment. And also, what is the cost of the program and can you afford it? As we're a Samoan institution, our students are generally not eligible for government loans or student loans. So you have to be able to pay for the program, and how are you going to do that? So once you have all of your questions answered, you think you meet the requirements and you have your head around the time and financial commitments, we encourage you to then apply online. To start your application, you go to our website and click on the Apply Now button in the top right-hand corner. We have 2 intakes, January and July, the next one being July. The closing date for January is the 1st of September the previous year, and for July, it is the 1st of March. So there's still time to apply for July 2024. For your application, we require certified or official transcripts and awards. We require transcripts for all of your previous tertiary studies. So it's important that you submit all of them. And in the online application, there are instructions on how we want those transcripts sent to us. We require 3 letters of recommendation, and one of those has to be from a medical doctor physician. We collect these letters on your behalf, so you don't have to go out and get them yourself. You enter your reference details into the application, and once you pay the application fee, we will contact them directly to ask for their letters of recommendation, and they'll be uploaded directly into your application. We also require a personal essay, and this is your chance to tell us your story and explain why you want to be a doctor and why you want to study at OUM. And we also need your CV and resume. So you need to complete all of these requirements, and then you need to submit your application online by the deadline so that you can be considered for that intake. I don't recommend applying the week of the closing date because you need time for your referees to supply those letters of recommendation to us, which, as I mentioned, only happens after you pay the application fee. So start your application early, and please allow time to complete your application before the deadline so that you can submit it online before or on the deadline. If your application is successful and you are eligible for an interview, you will have an interview with an admissions counsellor first to discuss why you want to be a doctor, why you want to study at OUM, and to confirm your understanding of our program, and to make sure we're all on the same page about tuition, fees, rotations, and the commitments required. If that interview goes well, you will then have an interview with the admissions panel consisting of 2 members. And one of the really good things about our program is that generally you find out within 24 to 48 hours after the panel interview if you've been offered a place in the MD program at OUM. Unlike other medical schools, you don't have to wait for the entire cohort to be interviewed before you find out if you're successful. You'll find out fairly quickly. If you are accepted into the program, the admissions team will work with you to get all of your post-acceptance documents in by the deadline, which for July is the 1st of June. So yeah, that's pretty much it from me. Again, if you have any questions, please contact the admissions team. We are a friendly bunch and we are here to help. And I'll also stick around for the end of this session if you have any more questions.
Shanda, we do have a couple of questions in our Q&A box. Would you be willing to
Awesome.
take them now?
Sure. Let's
Okay.
have a look.
The first one is from Anonymous, and they have said, I have a GPA of 2.7. Can I be considered?
Yes. So if your GPA is slightly lower than what we require, that's okay. You can still submit an application. We assess the applications holistically. So we don't just look at your GPA. We look at your letters of recommendation. We look at your essay. We look at your work experience. So it's all taken into consideration. So even if it's slightly lower, you may still be eligible for an interview. So, but I encourage you to talk to your admissions counselor as well.
Thank you. Kirsty would like to know, in relation to academic transcripts, what happens if one of your degrees is over 10 years old? Does that matter?
No, it doesn't matter. We don't have a time limit on when you've studied your degree. You can apply with a degree that's 10 years old or older. And that, like I said, we'll look at everything in your application. Hopefully you've got work experience on top of that to assist your application.
Shanda? Miriana asks, what hospitals in Chicago do you work with? And Shanda may not have the answer to that, so I can answer unless you'd like to, Shanda.
I don't have the answer to that one. Sorry. Thank you.
OUM does place students for clinical rotations in Chicago in the Jackson Park area. And there are other hospitals within the United States that OUM students are placed at. But that's the one that you may be, that's the area that you may be looking at, Mariana, in Chicago. Okay. Anonymous would like to know, Shanda, please, hi, please accept my apologies, and no apologies necessary. We love questions. Anonymous would like to know, could you please review the first interview details? Thank you.
Okay, so if you are successful with your application, we'll contact you and let you know that you are successful. You will be eligible for an interview, and that will be with the admissions counselor. And in that interview, we will talk about why you want to be a doctor, why you've chosen OUM to study medicine. We'll talk about all sorts of things. We'll cover the program and your understanding of the program, how much homework you've done. And then we'll also make sure we're all on the same page about the program, the tuition costs, etc. And then if that interview goes well, you'll move on to the second interview with the panel consisting of 2 members. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is about the reference letter. So another anonymous attendee says, the reference letter does not have much detail on the website. I am in process on applying and gathering my references. That's fantastic. And the people I'm asking for reference are asking the link/requirement just due to time constraint to see if they have capacity to write the letter. Is there a guide that I can show my reference to see if they can do the reference?
Okay, so there's no length requirement. So a page or 2, if they want to really sing your praises, is great. What we do is when you pay the application fee, as I say, we will email them and ask them to supply the letter, and we will ask them in that email what they want, what they need to supply. So, why they are recommending you to OUM, what would make you a good doctor, etc. So all of that is in the information that we send them. But you can also contact your admissions counselor or the admissions team, and we can give you a little blurb about what we ask for. But no time limit. They can just write however much they like.
Thank you. Susanna would like to know, is Samoa scholarship to study at OUM, is that still happening?
Yes, we still offer Samoan citizens scholarships to study at OUM.
Thank you. Salma would like to know, if I'm interested in rotating in a hospital that is outside the list of affiliated ones, is the university able to facilitate that? So what I will say first is one step at a time. The first things are to try to figure out, is the university the right fit for me in terms of the program and offering? Then for the live locations, are those locations, once I'm in my clinical rotations 2 to 3 years down the road, am I willing to travel to accommodate the various rotations that will be offered to me? So yes, there are, you are able to do rotations in hospitals that are not in the current roster at OUM, because the OUM deans do work actively with students who have a particular placement area that they would like to work at if they have a particular contact. There is no guarantee that will be an acceptable site for rotation. There are still approvals that have to happen. So at the time of being a prospective student or during the admissions process, we wouldn't be able to say, yes, you definitely would be able to do rotations at the hospital that you currently work at or the hospital that's in your current community. So what I would encourage is for you to think about kind of your flexibility in the clinical years around being able to do rotations at sites that are both near as well as far from you if you want to have some additional experience. And we do require all of our students to complete a clinical rotation in Samoa, a 4-week rotation. So there is some travel required in rotations regardless, but excellent question, Selma. Okay, one last question from Rick, and then we'll move on to the next section and save the rest for the Q&A portion. Rick would like to know, I am retired. This limits my recent work experience. Will this disqualify me? Jana, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah. No, it doesn't disqualify you not having recent work experience. As I mentioned, we assess the applications holistically. So we take all of it into consideration, so it won't affect your eligibility to get into the program.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our next section and we'll continue to answer questions in the Q&A box. So please do continue to post any that you have. So I wanted to speak with you all a bit about OUM's curriculum, which consists of 3 phases. The first is the preclinical phase, the second is the transition phase, and the third is the clinical phase. So it's very similar to other medical schools that you may be considering at this time in your medical student journey. So the preclinical phase is chiefly focused on ensuring that you have the learning, knowledge, skills, and attributes to support you in your clinical practice as a clinician by ensuring that you have the basic understanding of clinical sciences and medical sciences before you move on to patient care. So in the preclinical phase, your first unit at OUM is called General Principles. And General Principles is a survey course that ensures that you have the basic understandings of medical biology that will support you through the remaining preclinical courses. So General Principles is an 8-week course and it covers things like the basics of immunology, cell biology, microbiology, so on and so forth. And this course was designed because at OUM, we have students who come from both scientific and non-scientific backgrounds, both healthcare and non-healthcare backgrounds. We have students who come from all different types of universities across the 5 countries that Shanda mentioned. And we have students who are at various stages of at times since their last university degree. So General Principles is really designed to ensure that you're on even footing with the other medical students before you enter the medical sciences. So after passing General Principles, you can move on to the preclinical medical sciences units. And those consist of all the systems. So cardiovascular system, urinary system, pulmonary system, endocrine system, that's the course that's running right now. Neuroscience, gastrointestinal system, musculoskeletal system, heme immune system, and I'm always forgetting one, but you can look on the website if you want a bit more information. So each course runs for between 6 and 12 weeks, and they all have the exact same structure. So they all are comprised of 3 basic components. The first is recorded topic lectures. The second is readings in your medical textbooks. And the third is live sessions. So each week you get a set of recorded topic lectures, usually 6 to 8 recorded topic lectures that are between 20 and 30 minutes in length. And each of them has an assigned reading that is available to you in the university's library and on Clinical Key, which is the resource we use for our university textbooks, which are all online for you. After reviewing the recorded lectures and doing the readings, then you have 3 live sessions. In every course, from general principles to cardiovascular, to pulmonary, to endocrine, to urinary, so on and so forth, the live sessions are mandatory and they're all offered at the same time. There are 2 sessions every day. The first session, every day of the live sessions, there are live sessions 3 days per week, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So there is a workshop session that you have some questions that are offered in advance and some time to prepare, and then you come and discuss the answers to those questions at the workshop session. So those workshops are on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. So they're Tuesdays, 8 p.m. US Eastern Time, and they are Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So if that's not your local time, you can use a time zone converter like Dateful to put in, a Tuesday date, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, and that'll give you the time of the 2 classes. So that's Tuesdays. Wednesdays is a case discussion, so you're given a patient case and have a number of questions that are things like discuss the etiology of this disease, discuss the pathophysiology of this disease, discuss the treatments of this disease. And as a group, and with a professor, you go through each of those questions. You bring in figures, you just have a nice discussion so you learn more about each disease. The case discussions are on Wednesdays, Wednesday, 8 p.m. US Eastern Standard Time, and Wednesday, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. The last session of the week in General Principles is a lecture chat, which is like a review session for the week's content. And that is on Thursdays at 8 p.m. US Eastern Standard Time and Thursdays at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. In your medical sciences units, instead of a lecture chat review, you have a problem-based learning session where you're given a small amount of information and you have to be able to use your burgeoning clinical skills and knowledge and work with your colleagues in order to answer those questions. It's a really fun session. It's very interactive. In addition to those 3 live sessions, there are also office hour sessions offered with your course professors. So when you have questions that you can't get answered during the live session or that you don't want to, can't get answered via email, or you just need to have a discussion and have a look at things with your professor, the professors will offer office hours so that you can meet with them and have a one-to-one discussion. And often professors offer group discussions during office hours as well, if that's a format you're more comfortable with. So once you complete all of your preclinical medical sciences, then you move on to the transition phase. So for students who are North America based, in the transition phase, they go into USMLE prep. That's the United States Medical Licensure Exam, Step 1. And students who are planning to practice in the United States or planning to do clinical rotations in the United States must pass their USMLE Step 1 before they start their clinical rotations, which is why it's a part of the transition phase. After that, there is a clinical skills course, which is comprised of both asynchronous learning as well as live in-person sessions that prepare you to perform some of the basic clinical skills that you will need as you go into your clinical rotations. So the clinical skills course is offered both for students who are on that USMLE track, as well as students that are not residing in North America nor planning to do rotations in the United States. So in those cases, they go to the clinical skills course as part of the transition phase and are not required to take the USMLE Step 1. Instead, they take a preclinical exam that's just an overall examination of their preclinical subjects that I just mentioned, and then they go into their clinical skills course. So if you're in North America, the clinical skills course live portion is offered in North America. If you're in Australia, The clinical skills course live portion is offered in Australia, and if you are in Samoa, the clinical skills live portion is offered in Samoa as well. So that's the transition phase, and then you go into your clinical phase. So the clinical phase consists of three different types of rotations. You have core rotations. So those are things that would be core rotations that you need to take at any medical school. So for instance, most students start with their first rotation in community and family medicine, which is an 8-week course. So they are assigned a clinical supervisor. They have a rotation with that clinical supervisor. They have a clinical course for community family medicine that has some readings and some practice quizzes in it and some additional information that enhances their learning while on rotation. And they complete clinical cases and submit that as part of their clinical course. So once they're finished community and family medicine, then they move on to their next core rotations. The other core rotations include things like pediatrics, psychiatry, surgery, internal medicine, all things that you would need to have rotated through before you take any of your licensure exams. After your core rotations, you'll have an opportunity to take elective rotations. And elective rotations can be taken in areas of interest. So if you're interested in cardiac, then you can take a rotation in cardiology, for example. The third type of rotation is your Samoan rotation. And what I will say is that you can take different types of rotations in Samoa. Everything is offered at the TTM hospital in beautiful Apia, Samoa, which is our teaching hospital in Samoa. And the most popular rotation to take in Samoa is the obs and gynae or OBGYN rotation, because the students at TTM hospital who are taking that rotation often get clinical experiences in obs and gynae that they would get nowhere else in the world, many of them even delivering babies during their clinical rotation. At the end of your clinical phase, you take the OSCE, which is the objective structured clinical examination, and a final clinical examination. Both of these are preparatory for your board examinations, which you take if you are in the US, you will take your USMLE Step 2 during your clinical phase. And in other locations, for example, if you're in Australia, you'll take your AMC after completion of your degree. So some students do take some board examinations during the clinical phase, and others take their board examinations after graduation. And at the moment, we do have a USMLE prep Step 1 and Step 2 prep program for students in that track. And an AMC preparatory program is also in the works now as well. So that's the basics of the OUM curriculum. Students generally take between 4 and 5 years to complete that curriculum. And we do want to ensure that students have breaks. I know it sounds like a lot when you hear about 4 to 5 years of curriculum in a 5-minute span. So what I would say is that we do want to ensure that students have breaks between each of those courses and rotations. So in the preclinical phase, you have a 2-week break between each of your classes. And there's also a closure period over the December holidays where you'll have a more extended period of time for break. In the clinical phase, we also recommend students take at least 2 weeks off between each rotation. That enables them to complete all of their paperwork and get a bit of a break before moving into their next clinical rotation. There are some students that would like to get through the clinical phase a little bit quicker or want things scheduled in a certain way. So occasionally we can accommodate students not having that 2-week break in the clinical phase in some circumstances, but in the preclinical phase, all the courses are set up to have those 2-week breaks. So that is the OUM curriculum. I am just going to look quickly in our Q&A box if there are any questions about the curriculum, and then Shanda and myself can answer them now. Okay. So Salma would like to know, does the school facilitate rotating overseas besides Samoa, i.e. in Asia and in Africa? OUM does participate in the VSLO, which is the Visiting Student Learning Opportunities, which is basically an overall intake for medical students in medical schools across the world where they would like to do rotations in areas outside of their home country. And we absolutely have had students who have done overseas rotations in other countries. It is something, if you're interested in doing that, that you look into it in some detail and that you also look at that relative to the licensure requirements in your location to ensure that doing a rotation in a particular area and in a particular subject would not harm your ability to gain your licensure in your area. And we do have regional deans. We have a dean for Samoa, a dean for Samoa and Asia Pacific, a dean for Australia and New Zealand, and a dean for North America. And they have more of a wealth of information on those topics and can be sure to advise you and ensure that all the rotations that you are doing will count towards your degree and are relevant for the licensure that you would like to obtain. Shanda, is there anything I'm missing about that topic that you'd like to add?
No, I think that was great.
Okay. Anonymous would like to know, do you have any in-person meetings for new students for the first year? Shanda, would you like to talk a little bit about like the kind of meetings and get-togethers that we do for our new students? And then I can add it onto that.
Sure. So because we're an online institution, that's how we usually meet our students. So if you're accepted into the program, we usually have a cohort meet and greet in the lead up to orientation. We have a fun discussion then, and you get to meet the other people in your cohort. And then we start all of the orientation sessions, which are, again, all online. And during those sessions, I think Nicolette would probably talk about this, but we also encourage students to start some WhatsApp groups with the local students in your local area. So then you can start arranging to meet with people locally if you want to.
Thanks. So during orientation, we do, as part of our online sessions, we do get students together in groups that are local to them. So like each state gets to meet students in that state, whether you're in Australia or in the United States. And for those in Canada, there's like a Canada group that gets to meet during orientation. And so sometimes students do organize live in-person groups as after meeting students in orientation. We also have the OUMSA, which is the OUM Student Association, and they do several live in-person events throughout the year, sometimes charity events. And we have OUM peer supporters who also organize in-person events throughout the year, and many study groups that of students that live close will sometimes meet in person as well. So we try to do our best to accommodate students' needs for both online interaction as well as in person where possible. Anonymous would like to know, I know this is far out, but how many hours a week is residency at a minimum? So it depends on where you are and it depends on the rotation that you're in. But in general, you can expect to work a full-time hours per week at any residency that you undertake. So that would be around 35 to 40 hours of being on site in your clinical rotation, plus any additional coursework, readings that your clinical supervisor may ask you to do, or readings that are part of your online coursework to support you through that clinical rotation. So being in the clinical phase, just like being in the preclinical phase, is a full-time occupation, a full-time job. And we do allow and permit students to work during the preclinical phase, although we don't recommend that, and we do not allow students, permit students to be working during the clinical phase because of the hours that are required on site at a clinical rotation. Mariana asked that question as well, so hopefully Mariana, that's answered your question. Okay, this is a great question from Monica about the length of the program. Monica says, hi everyone, hi Monica. I'm curious about the length of the OUM degree. I saw online the degree is between 4 and 4.5 years. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm wondering why there's a half-year difference. So the main reason why there may be a half-year difference is for students who due to licensure exams. So for students who are planning to practice in the United States or do clinical rotations in the United States, because you need to take licensure exams during your degree, that extends the amount of time that is required of you during that degree, because you still have to complete all of the additional requirements in addition to those licensure exams. Shanda, is there anything else you'd like to add about the length of the degree or why there's that difference?
Yeah, I think it also can be because if there's any delay with the clinical rotations or there's a wider gap between, it might stretch out to 4.5 years. So that's something to be aware of.
Just monitoring the Q&A. One moment, please. Linda would like to know, can I take the USMLE when I'm not a resident of the US? Absolutely, you can, Linda, and anyone else who is interested in doing this. So let's say you're a student in New Zealand, but maybe you're interested to move to the United States for some portion of your career and would like to be eligible for licensure in the United States. So students who are not residents of the US, but for whatever reason would like to complete the requirements for licensure in the US are more than welcome to do that whilst they're at OUM. So in the preclinical phase, you would finish your preclinical courses, and then you would move into the USMLE Step 1 prep program and take your USMLE Step 1, just as if you were living in the United States. We do allow students to take their USMLE steps, even if they're not residents in the US. Anonymous would like to know, how long is the General Principles course? So the General Principles course is, again, that first course that's taken. So you get in, you submit your application documentations, you get through your interview with your admissions counselor, you get through the panel interview, and you're offered admission to OUM. Hooray. Then you get to go to a week and get to meet, which is our orientation week, and get to meet other students in your cohort. So we actually just had our January cohort O week last week, which is why I have no voice, because I am the lead for O week for the university. And if you are on this pathway for July, then you'll have your O week at the end of June, and you'll start the General Principles course on the 1st of July. So General Principles is an 8-week course. So all the weeks 1 through 4 are the same. You've got those topic recorded lectures, you're reading your textbooks, you're going to class, you're going to office hours. In the 5th week, there's a reading week, because at the end of the 5th week is a midterm exam. So during the reading week, you don't have live classes that you have to attend or lectures that you have to watch recordings of. You're doing all of your studying for the midterm exam during reading week. And then at the end of the course, there's also another study period before the final exam. So the course is an 8-week course. And something that was asked during orientation is like, okay, well, what does a typical week look like for a medical student? What does a typical day look like for a medical student? And we thought for this session that question does come up during the admissions process as well. Wouldn't it be helpful for prospective students to also kind of get a window into what a day is like for a medical student at OUM, how they kind of organize their time? So this is the ideal daily plan, an ideal weekly plan for a student at OUM, starting in the General Principles course. So being in medical school is a full-time job, so you should expect to be studying 40+ hours a week, as if you were working 40+ hours a week as your full-time job. So when we talk about a daily plan, we want to ensure that you have time for study, but we also want to ensure that you have time for the most important things in life as well. So we always put sleep first. It's very, very important that medical students get adequate amounts of sleep because of the amount of information that they are going through and committing to memory and synthesizing in their brains. It's impossible to do that if you are constantly sleep deprived. And also, medical school is not a sprint, it is an ultra marathon that is completed in a series of 50-meter sprints. So it's very essential that you get adequate levels of sleep. So medical students' daily plan should always include about 8 hours of adequate sleep and about 8 hours of study time. In addition to sleep and study, there's one more important S that we recommend for all of our medical students, which is support systems. Those are the keys to success in the preclinical: sleep, study, and your support system. So it's really important that you maintain your connections with the people in your life that you are closest to, that you support and that support you. You cannot do this completely alone. You're going to need to rely on those people and those community members to help you along the way. So it's really important that you also have time in your day to connect with your friends and family so you can see, oh, you sleep for 8 hours, you wake up and have breakfast, and maybe you call your dad. You have, a standing coffee where you meet up at the coffee shop around the corner with your best friend and you bring your dogs and chat for 30 minutes. So it's really important that you continue to do those things. And it's also important, in addition to those three S's, that you are ensuring that you're maintaining good physical and mental health as well. So always ensuring that the activities that you do in your daily life for physical health, so if you work out, if you walk, if you get fresh air, those are things you should all continue to plan into your day. And if you're someone who likes to meditate or if you have a spiritual practice, those practices should absolutely be continued and should be planned as part of your daily life while you're in medical school. You should not compromise on those activities because once you start medical school, you are now basically thinking like a doctor, and doctors are lifelong learners. So this is like every day of your life after this is you're going to be learning things, thinking through medical problems. So you have to continue to be the person that you are that brought you to medical school. So the people in your life, those activities in your life, you need to make sure that you have time for them. There's also make time, between time that you study during the day and the time that you need to study and go to class in the evening. So make sure that you have hobbies or you're part of sports teams or could have a class at a community center or you volunteer somewhere that you are continuing that activity as well. And you make sure that that's part of your daily life. So we see that as friends and family and activity time. And then in the evenings, you go to class. So again, on Tuesdays, you have a workshop from 8 to 10, a case discussion from 8 to 10 on Wednesdays, and a lecture chat from 8 to 10 on Thursdays. Some students are like, well, I don't really need to go to class. I'll just watch all of the recordings. I'm telling you right now, plan to go to class. You are investing an incredible amount of time, effort, money into a medical degree. You must squeeze all of the juice, all of the goodness out of the medical degree. You're only cheating yourself out of that information and knowledge if you are not making time to attend class. So make sure you're making time to attend class. Every week in general principles, you have practice exams that help prepare you for things like your midterm and your final exam. So it's good for you to kind of plan to take those quizzes around the same time that you would be going to class and your brain would be in that mode. So I'd say take those on Sunday. And then on Fridays and Saturdays, those can be days for rest. Some individuals may choose to work. We do recommend that students continue to maintain a routine of study every day. So we have an alternative daily plan that includes days for work or for rest or alternative activity with a shorter amount of study time during those days. So you can see it's a lot of hours of study that are required of medical students. And before I move off of that, I'll just kind of focus on this study block here. So do we expect or think that when we say medical students should study for 8 hours, that a medical student's going to be like this on a medical textbook for 8 hours, reading constantly all the no, that's not what we mean by study for 8 hours. When you are studying in medical school, it's completely different than studying in any other degree you have ever done because you are not memorizing information in order to take a test. You are learning the entire body system in order to save someone's life. So every material that you interact with in medical school, you're interacting with it actively in order to commit that information, not just to memory, but commit it into your eventual practice of medicine. So the way that you do that is not to stare at the textbook for 8 hours straight, but rather do these blocks where you're actively interacting with your material. So here's an example study block. You would start at the beginning of the hour, you take 5 minutes, say, okay, what am I going to do over this hour? What am I going to accomplish? Okay, I'm going to watch this one topic lecture that's 20 minutes, and that's what I'm going to accomplish over this hour. Okay, ready, break. Then you're going to do your active study for 40 minutes. So this requires you to be actively focused on one thing that you've planned for 40 minutes straight. And you can do that. I know that you can do that. At the very end of that 40 minutes, you're going to take a breath, congratulate yourself for having that level of focus for 40 minutes, and do a check. So think of a question that someone might ask about that material. Think about a patient that you may have seen at some point or seen some patient on TV that had something to do with the material that you just read. Do a little bit of a check that lets you know where you're at. And then you take a break. So that break means you go get a snack, you go outside for a little bit, you text your friends, you go on TikTok, you do whatever your heart desires and makes you happy. And then after your 10-minute break, you come back and you make a plan and you start again. Those are what a study block looks like for a medical student. And you do about maybe 6 or 7 of those study blocks on your full-time study days. So that's kind of what it looks like for a student who's in general principles, and successful students will carry that on through for the rest of their pre-clinicals. For students who are going into their clinicals, you just replace that 8-hour study block with being on site in your clinical rotation and your class planning study time with doing things like writing your cases or doing your reading that's been requested by your clinical supervisor. So you can kind of get your brain and yourself into a routine that just knows what to expect every day. So you don't have to wake up every day and be like, oh, I have so much to do. I don't even know where to start. Every day you're just doing the same routine, and it can be really helpful. So that's what a day and a week looks like in the life of a medical student at OUM. Okay, I'm going to answer Shanda and I are going to answer some questions from the Q&A box, and then we'd like to tell you a little bit about our student ambassadors. Shanda, was there anything in the Q&A box that you saw that you'd like to answer while I have a second to review?
Yep, sure. Oh, I'm having a look as well.
I'll answer this one from Amanda. Amanda says, if I want to do my placements in a very rural hospital in Ontario, Canada, is that allowed? Hoping to become a physician for a rural clinic hospital. And the reason why I want to answer this is I am in rural Ontario, Canada. So Amanda, yes, we do support students who would like to do rotations in rural areas in Ontario in the same way that we support students who'd like to do rural rotations in Australia or New Zealand, Samoa, which is already a rural location, and the United States as well. So the way that we do that is we simply, once we've identified a site or if we're working with the name of the place that's in Collingwood that I completely forgot, the name of that does the rural rotations within Ontario. We work directly with the site itself or with those groupings, and we'll work together on rotation. So can I guarantee that you will have a particular rotation in rural Ontario at this point? No, but we absolutely do work with students like rural placements, and we do very much encourage students who are considering rural placement, and for students who are not considering rural placement, we encourage them to do some of their clinical rotations or a clinical rotation at a rural site. Thanks for that, Amanda.
There's a question there that I can answer from Talia, if you'd like.
Great.
Yep. So it says, "Hey ladies, thanks for this session." No problem. What hospitals will the rotations be at for an Australian citizen? Is it in a specific state or all over? And also, do we organise and arrange this, or will OUM arrange this? So we have a team of people who will organise them for you in Australia. They will try and organise them as close to home as possible. However, we do state that you may have to travel or relocate for some of the rotations. So that's important to know. And if you have your own hospital contacts, we can have conversations with those hospitals to see if you can rotate in those particular hospitals. It may not always be possible, but the team of clinical coordinators will handle that for you.
Okay. Valerie would like to know, what is ECFMG, the Education Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates? Besides USMLE 1, is there another exam, NBME? So the ECFMG, they have a couple of different roles. They do certify degrees from medical students who graduated from foreign universities and who would like to practice in the United States. I believe also that Australia also uses ECFMG for degree certification. So the university and deans will work with each graduate at OUM to fill out paperwork that is required by ECFMG to certify their degree as they go into the residency match. So it's something to think about relative to your residency match. And OUM has the infrastructure in place and supports all of our students to ensure they have their ECFMG certification as they go into their residency. And there are a number of activities in addition to that that the Dean's Office in North America has to support students who are starting residency, such as doing things like interview preparation and application preparation. And Valerie also wanted to know, besides USMLE Step 1, is there another exam, the NBME? The NBME is the National Board of Medical Examiners exam. It's a preparatory exam for USMLE Step 1. So students at OUM go into the USMLE prep program, and then they take the NBME practice exam before taking the USMLE to ensure that they have readiness for passing their USMLE before they attempt that exam, because you don't want to go into your USMLE exam before you've done that practice step and fail that exam. So students take the NBME first. Anonymous would like to know, are we permitted to take leave during the course, and for how long? Shanda, would you like me to answer this question, or would you like to answer that?
Yes, please. You probably know a little bit more than me.
That's fine.
Sorry.
We do allow students to take leave during the course. So students may need to have leave for various reasons. Sometimes students have a health issue or a family circumstance that requires them to take a leave. Sometimes some students have like something with work where they need to be on call or on site in a particular location, and they're not able to fulfill kind of the things that they need for a course during the time that they have that. So we do allow students to take leave. We call it LOA, leave of absence. And students just fill out a form that says this is why I want to take leave and this is how long I want to take it for. And if it meets our requirements in our student handbook, then that's approved and the student is able to take leave for that time period. Students are allowed to take a maximum of 12 months leave in total throughout the course. Students do not have to take 12 months leave. The less leave you take, the sooner that you're finished, but you can take a maximum of 12 months leave. After that, we ask that you withdraw and then re-enter at a time that is more conducive to your personal circumstances and schedule. So we do allow for leave to occur. Oh, we haven't mentioned this, Chanda, but this is a very good question from Monica. Monica wants to know, do OUM students concurrently do a research project with their degree?
Yes, they do. In the was it the first is it first 2 years they get their research project. They discuss the research project with the research advisors, and then after that they start working on the research project in hopes to well, they have to publish that research at the end of the program.
That's
So I'm
right.
sure you know more than I do about
That's great. That's about the level that you probably need to know. So all students have to complete a research project while at OUM, and you must publish your research project, which is great. You really want to have published research on your CV. You can start your research project at any time after general principles. And most students will go through, we have a very defined and stepwise planning process. So most students will do all of their planning for their research during their preclinicals and then complete the research during the clinical period. We have support through our director of research and our associate director of research, as well as students are assigned a research advisor. So you don't need to have any prior experience with doing research in order to complete this degree requirement. And we'll take one more, which is from Anonymous. Once we graduate, can we sit the PLAB license if we'd like to work in the UK? Chanda, would you like to answer? Would you like me to answer?
well, I can try. As far as I know, this course will set you up to take any medical exam in other countries. So yes, you can take the, I don't see the answer, but that particular exam if you want to become a doctor in another country.
So one thing for everyone to note is that you most of the time you're welcome to take licensure exams as long as you meet certain requirements. But just because you can take a licensure exam does not mean you can be licensed in that area. Like it's not the only thing that you need. So if you're looking to be licensed in a particular area, it's incumbent upon you to do your research very thoroughly and well before undertaking that. So we don't currently have any students who are licensed for practice in the UK, and we don't have supports for any of our dean's offices on any of the requirements that you would need for licensure in the UK. So that's something to think about, and just do a little bit of additional research if that's something that you're interested in. All right, let me talk a little bit about our student ambassadors. We have a student ambassadors program, is a partnership between the university and the OUM Student Association, where we we enable our prospective students like yourselves to have a contact, an OUM student that can say, hey, this is what it's like to be at OUM. This is what my day is like. This is what it's like for me to do clinical rotations. This is what it was like for me in classes. So our student ambassadors all have some training to be able to support prospective students like yourselves, and you're more than welcome to reach out to them if you have a question about the program or about how you might fit in to a program. So all of our student ambassadors' email addresses are listed, and you're welcome to connect with them. We also, our next live webinar is to meet the student ambassadors, and we encourage each and every one of you to join us for that session. And you can meet our student ambassadors in person and even ask them questions live. So please do join us for our next webinar session. So we have 1 minute left. I'll monitor to see any additional questions in the Q&A, and then we will close the session. Okay, one last question is from Selma. If I choose to practice outside the USA, can I still rotate in the US? Will I still need to take and pass the USMLE in order to rotate in the United States? So clinical rotation sites in the United States do require a USMLE Step 1 pass or they will take students for clinical rotation. So you're able to rotate in the United States even if you're not going to practice there, but you have to complete the USMLE Step 1 before doing that. So that's not an OUM requirement, that's a requirement of clinical sites in the United States. So Shanda and I want to thank everyone for joining us, and I'll turn it over to Shanda for next steps.
Yep. So the next steps are the deadline for July, if that's when you're applying, is the 1st of March. So just keep working on your application and have it all complete and ready to submit before or on the deadline. You can log into your application at any time to see what is still required. And we also send follow-up emails to let you know what is outstanding. But if anything on your application seems amiss, please contact your admissions counselor or your the admissions team, and we'll look into it for you. But yeah, 1st of March, very important. After that, we have the closing date. Sorry, I closed this thing. So if you are accepted into the MD program at OUM, you have a post-acceptance deadline. You need to submit certain documents, which will all be on your offer letter, and that deadline is the 1st of May. So you need to submit all of your post-acceptance documents and pay the tuition fee payment by that deadline to enter the program. And then orientation week will be the 25th or the 26th, depending where you're located in the world, to the 29th to the 30th of June, 2024. And then classes start in July, the 1st of July, I believe.
So we look forward to seeing all of your applications, to seeing you in interviews, and hopefully in a week as well. Thank you so much for joining Shanda and I for this session. We really enjoyed connecting with you. And if you have additional questions, do reach out directly to your admissions counselor, and they'd be more than happy to assist you. Thanks, everyone. And thanks to you joining us via recording as well. We'll see you all at the next session to meet our student ambassadors. Thanks so much, and bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.